Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Salam Media. I am your host for this evening, Dakir Dawud. It is now 38 minutes past 7 on a beautiful Friday night. Well, I forgot to mention tonight we're broadcasting to you from Bloemfontein, quite strangely, and not the headquarters in Johannesburg. We're working on that. We're working on that. Very soon we will be back to normal. Well, talking of things going back to normal, things have been very shaky in South Africa this week with SAFA being convinced that the South Africa versus Ghana game, which was a decider for South Africa to go into the next round of qualifiers for the World Cup in Qatar, was influenced by betting. This comes after referee, or let's say former FIFA referee, Ace Noble, said 90% of the wrong decisions went against Bafana. This is quite an interesting take, and SAFA has went further and sent in a request to FIFA to review the game, in which FIFA will be doing that. Ace Noble did say earlier this week that from his independent conclusion, that is, the referee in this match was blatantly biased against South Africa, with 90.9% of incorrect decisions against one team, is a clear case of a match unlawfully influenced or manipulating the cause or the outcome of the match. This is what Mr. Noble told the media. Of the 33 decisions, 30 of them went against South Africa. Well, that is something that leaves a bone of contention for many South Africans. Ndiaye was awarded a penalty against South Africa. Awarded a penalty against South Africa after deciding that Rushan Deruk allegedly fouled Daniel Amartey inside the area. There was barely contact between the two players, and this left so much controversy and questions being asked by everybody. Well, to answer those questions this evening, we're going to be joined by a footballing legend and also an analyst in his own right. He's also one of the best coaches this country has ever seen, coaching the likes of Kaizer Chiefs, Stars of Africa. I mean, he doesn't need any more introduction. Coach Farouk Khan, thanks so much for joining me on Salam Media this evening. It's an honor to be speaking to you about a topic that's so close to your heart.
Yeah, it's my honor, my brother. Shukran for having me, and hopefully, we can shed some light on this very delicate subject.
Well, delicate it is, however, everybody's having a go. This was one of the proudest moments South Africa's seen in football. And going into this match, South Africa were in high spirits. And to have our spirits dampened in this manner and in this fashion leaves quite a bitter taste in many South Africans' mouths. How do you feel about this match? Do you think that it was manipulated to a certain extent, or were we just not good enough on the evening?
Well, I wouldn't want to go as far as saying we weren't good enough. I think, the coach, Hugo Bruce, has done a fantastic job in the short period that he's been here. He's really reinvented Bafana. The old days we used to pick the normal suspects, as you want to call it. And they didn't always produce. I mean, there's several times when Bafana apparently played attractive football but never produced results. This young crop of players have really shown that they can produce the necessary performances and get the necessary results more than anything, irrespective of what people could say about the teams that we played. I mean, we had two top teams in the form of Ghana and Zimbabwe. We always had a problem against Zimbabwe. And if you had to say to me that we would finish top with only one draw before this game, because I still believe that we only drew one game. And I say this based on the fact that we did not lose the game to Ghana. I think the referee had a huge influence on the outcome of that particular game. If you look at the balance of the game that was played, we created, yes, they did create chances, and at home, a team like Ghana will come at you, but they didn't convert those chances, and we didn't look out of our depth in any way. So I think on the basis of what I've seen, a fair result would have been at least a draw, but not a penalty decision which decided the outcome of this particular game.
Look, we'll get to that penalty decision. I know that the listeners and the viewers at home are waiting to get your thoughts and opinion on that. However, looking at our Bafana team, I mean, many of these players have not traveled up in Africa before. We had a fairly young team. do you think that, yes, we're taking the younger route and looking to grow with these players, but do you feel that there should be a balance between experience and youngsters in this team?
Yeah, it's always good to have experience because the youngsters thrive on the experience of the senior players or the more experienced players. And I do think there's a couple of players that come to mind. You look at Lakay, the left fullback from Sundowns. I think he's definitely one I would have loved to see there. You look at Zwane as well, definitely one. But then I think the other players that he brought in, the younger players, could have benefited from these guys' experience. If you get a good balance between experience and youth, then you're obviously building for the future. You can't only build with youth. And as they say, you can't build with just older players, experienced players, because at some time you will need the youth to come through. So I think this is where Hugo may need to reconsider, because if you look at these previous games that he played, he did not use many older players. He brought in the likes of Dolly later on, because Dolly has proven at Kaizer Chiefs that he's really got his form back. But I think there's several other players that could have been considered as well. And for me, Lakay is one, Zwane is one, and probably there could be a few others that could have made a difference. And even having a player like Itumeleng Khune in your dressing room to inspire the keepers. He's been there, done that, played against the best in the world, the likes of Spain, the likes of Brazil, and that experience you can never put a price on. So I think from where I'm sitting, I think this is maybe where the coach could consider in the future to blend experience with youth and not just go with so-called youth. You look at some of the younger players, they're going through tough times. And this was a mental game. This game against Ghana was a mental. You're playing firstly away from home. You're playing in a hostile territory. You probably must understand that the refereeing is not going to beat your liking. I know firsthand when I was with Kaizer Chiefs, when I was with Santos, when we played in the Champions League, we really had difficulties. The hotels they put you in, the fields they give you for training, the referees' decisions, the change rooms, everything is against you. And if you only have young players, I think this young group really impressed me the way they dealt with it, because you could see they were extremely disciplined. They didn't really go with the referee when he made a decision. They weren't unruly. They were disciplined. But I just think a bit of experience on the field of play could have swayed the game in their direction, because when Ghana scored, they sat back. They were scared of us. You could see how they celebrated after that 1-0 win. It was like they'd already qualified for the World Cup. So we were not just the pushovers of the past. And I think they realized that this particular team is a fighting team. Yes, we may not have the same quality that they have, but we a group of players that will go out there and do everything to get a result.
And that was the nice thing to see from these guys, the effort and the work rate that they put in. And, like I said, it would have been nice to see those experienced campaigners come in there. Off the top of my head, the names that come to mind, Khune is one of them. The likes of even a goalkeeper in the likes of Munib Josephs back in those days, the likes of the Clayton Daniels, the Shabas in the midfield. Those are guys that would vocally put you under pressure. And I think that's what was needed in that team, because every 50-50 battle, Ghana won. Our guys put their heads up again and moved on to the next battle, instead of laying their markers down early in the game and letting the opposition know that they're here to play. And that's those kind of things that we lacked from the youngsters. But as time goes on, I think things will definitely fall into place. Was there any standout plays for you in that match in particular that caught your eye that you'd certainly be looking forward to in the future?
Well, Sandile Pete came to mind, and I think he's such an experienced campaigner. He's one of the unsung heroes. I saw some people saying that he's not too flashy, but you don't need to be flashy as a number 6. His job is to ensure that he creates stability in the midfield. He won most of the 1v1s in midfield. He neutralized the most dangerous Ghanaian player in midfield. And that, for me, is important, that you have these type of characters. He's playing in the Portuguese Premier League, and he's playing there week in and week out against the best opposition, the Benficas, the Portos. And you don't just play against those players by accident. On the flip side, a lot of the players in the team played in our local league. And no disrespect intended, but our local league is not at the same level as that of the European leagues, whether it be Portugal, whether it be England, whether it be Spain. That's a different level altogether. And I do think that if we want to really excel and not just have a flash in the pan, because when you say we're going to build, there must be some sustainable a sustainable plan in motion. Because if you're building just to qualify for AFCON, this is what Bruce said. He said he wouldn't hold them to account if they didn't qualify. So Bruce himself knew that Bafana is a team that's been in transition now. He needs to build a new generation of players to take this team forward. But if you plan only as far as AFCON and you only plan as far as qualifying for the next World Cup, the problem is what happens after that. I'm saying let us ensure that we have a sustainable 10-year plan, like Belgium did, like England did, like all of the major countries. I think the quick fix methods of 2 or 3 years or even a 4-year plan is too little. We should not plan for the next World Cup. We should plan for the next, let's say, for 10 years from now. What we do is we use this young crop and we blood in young players constantly. I don't know if you watched San Marino against England the other day, and there were so many young players that England fielded. Yeah. It clearly shows they have a plan in motion, because when those players reach their peak at 27, 28, they already have at least 1 or 2 World Cups behind them. They already have 40 or 50 or 60 international caps. And this is important because we equate experience with the fact of age being experience, but we don't equate it with the number of games. For me, experience would be ideal if we had, like a Neymar, he's played probably more than 100 odd games for his country. So that is experience, and he's only 28. Now, if you look at our senior or our players generally, they haven't had that many games. And this is where it's important to give you the support and say, okay, now that you're going to be building, we need to plan a number of friendly games against South American opposition, against European opposition. And then we can measure our progress. So as much as I want to talk about the fact that we want to qualify, hopefully even for this particular World Cup, there's still a chance that FIFA may rule in our favor. But we've got to look further ahead. We need to ensure that we get back to grassroots schools football, and then ultimately, I mean, it's a long-term process, and ultimately ensure that those schools football programs eventually filter into our national youth teams, because all our national youth teams qualify. The 17th sometimes qualify, and the 20th sometimes. But what happens? They go to the tournament, and within the first round, they're back home. So what have we really learned? You know, so we're just going to fill the numbers. I'm saying to you honestly, my brother, we have the best raw talent in the world. I'll challenge anybody. I studied my coaching in Brazil. I compared their under 10s to ours, and I promise you, raw for raw, our under 10s will give them a hiding. The big question
is... But now, where is the missing link? Where are we going wrong in South Africa?
Ask that question to them. And the missing link is what they do between the ages of 9 and 18. We don't do that. Our development is accidental. Our development is that Shaba came through, no development. Yet he was the guy who scored the opening goal against Mexico in the World Cup. Can you imagine if Shaba had a proper development? Teko Modesi, no development. All these players that we so idolize didn't have development. Couldn't have development, because when I was at Chiefs, we had a guy called Reiner Dinkelaga, goalkeeper coach. And he ensured that when I promoted Itumeleng to the first team at 18, he ensured that Itumeleng had the right development, although he had already missed out 2 or 3 stages. What I'm saying is, it's like school. You need to ensure that football gets the same attention, that kids get the right development from as young as 7, 8 years upwards. And then we will be able to become, because all of the countries that you mentioned that we so easily, fantasize about, your Spain, your Brazil, now your Belgium. Belgium was in a slump for many years. What did they do? They went back to saying, we need to have a development program that will ensure that every kid from as young as 5, 6 years old gets the proper development. And today they're bearing the fruits. I mean, in the last World Cup, they knocked Brazil out. And that would never have been thought about 20 years ago. So I'm saying, as much as we so passionate about our national team, and there's been so much change. I mean, since they've done as well as they have, there's been a change. You know, in the past, people were very negative about Bafana. Now we're all standing up and saying, no, Ghana, that was unfair. It was a penalty that wasn't supposed to be given. We should have been given a chance to go through. Now, guess what? You go through and you meet Algeria, or you meet Egypt, or you meet Senegal. Now, guys, what do we do now? What are we going to say now? Because they're just a cut above us. We're going to have a lot of motivation, but not necessarily motivation is not going to win you the game. Because if you look at the Sadio Manes that they have in those teams, those players are playing at a higher level, and they've proven in the past that we still have a lot of catching up to do. We had one player in the form of Percy Tau playing in England. Now he's back in Egypt. So we don't have anybody in the Premiership. Small countries like, well, I wouldn't say small countries in size, but America, as far as football is concerned, is a small country compared to us who's had football in our blood, in our veins for so many years. I mean, in America, football is probably number 5 sport. Yeah, it's number 1. Yet, they have more players playing in the Premier League than we have. In Spain, in England, in Portugal, everywhere. We need to get more players to play in those top leagues. And then we're not going to have to worry about the referee's decision. We're going to trash those opponents like Zimbabwe, 4 and 5. You understand what I'm saying? And we won't need a goal or a calculator to work out whether we should go through or not.
You see, that's the question. A lot of us had our calculators out, and so many questions were being asked. And it's been a tough one. This has been a very bitter pill to swallow for many South Africans, because for once we had so much hope. And I think the last time South Africa was this united was with the Rugby World Cup in 2019. Everybody came back now this past Sunday, and we were back in Bafana. We knew that they'd do it. And it just wasn't to be on the night. And if you look at the order of proceedings on the evening, we do know South Africa had to travel a couple of hours to get to the stadium from where they stayed. I mean, that's not normal. In South Africa, if our players, let's use Johannesburg, for example, Soccer City, SAFA will put the visiting team as close to the stadium as possible.
Yeah.
You give them 4 to 5-star hotels.
we had an experience when I was in Santos. We played against Simba, who was a top team in Tanzania. Simba is like a team like Man United is in England or Barcelona is in Spain, a big, big team. When they got here in the first leg, we put them up in the holidays. We had a bus, a luxury bus transporting them. We gave them a fantastic field at Lone Stadium, beautiful grass to train on. When we got there, guess what happened? They sent us a Sprinter with a chicken coop on top of it. We had our bags on our laps, and we drove to our hotel, which was 15 minutes away, but it took us an hour and a half because they were told they're coming in at night and take them on a long drive. They do everything in the book to gain an advantage. When you go into Africa, you must have a very, very strong mind. You must have people that are go-getters, because the going gets extremely tough. And believe me, when we won the Mandela Cup, which is your Champions League, in those days, it was a case of being strong-minded. What Mushin did was he got us to a stage where we said we're going to leave everything on the field. And, that's all that carried us through, because we just had a team made up of 11 and 1 or 2 subs, because they weren't registered in time. The likes of Kenny Nimak and them weren't registered and couldn't play. But the reason we won that competition is because we had a leader who had a strong mind in showing us that things are not going to be easy. And you've got to prepare for it. You've got to prepare for the worst scenario. This is no surprise to me that it took you to that particular stadium in Ghana simply to ensure that they tire you out. And I guarantee you, when you got there, the facilities, the training facilities weren't as good as we have. The hotels were not as good. And that's what they do to gain an advantage, as long as it's within the rules prescribed by FIFA. Because we questioned the fact when we were there with Simba, the dressing rooms were pathetic, not even proper toilets. And he said, as long as it is within the confines, you have a basic toilet, you have a proper place to sit. It doesn't matter if it's not comfortable or it's not well lit, as long as you have the basics in place, you've got to play the game.
But now, going back to that point, I mean, sport has evolved so much, let's say from the 90s, football for that matter, to the point where there's even university courses now to be team managers, football managers. Where is the job of the team manager to come in and go see the venue where you stay in, the hotel, the training facilities a week or 2 weeks before the time? Because I come from a predominantly rugby background, and that's what the team manager does. When the teams go play overseas, the team manager and the media officer will fly over, check out the facilities, make sure they are of quality, and they have to report back to higher management, to the CEOs, to the head coaches, and let them know, give them a full report of what you can expect when you get over there. And to a certain extent, sometimes the CEOs of the companies do make decisions so that the team can stay comfortably and have a comfortable experience once over there. Where is that balance from a football point of view? I feel like that could have been eliminated completely if certain processes were just followed.
Absolutely. I think that is why I said, as far as football is concerned in the country, we're playing catch up. I think we've made strides in as far as improving refereeing, because refereeing is very critical, even at junior level, because when refereeing is not well looked after, it affects the way you coach your team. It affects the whole overall progress of a nation in as far as the football is concerned. But so too administratively, I agree with you totally. Somebody should have gone out, should have checked out the venues, should have checked the distance between the traveling, should have ensured that the players are given everything they require to be at their best. It's not happening. It's happening in rugby. It's happening in cricket. I think if you look at all three codes, football is still playing catch up. And you can clearly see the progress that has been made. I mean, if you look at rugby, for example, we compete with the best and we've overcome the best. We beat England in the World Cup. It's like South Africa beating Brazil in a football World Cup or beating Spain in a football World Cup. That is how you can equate the two. But in our lifetime, I don't think we're going to see that happening. It's because we haven't put the proper structures in place. You can go back and say, yes, apartheid had a role to play, where rugby was a predominantly white sport and they had coaching. And yes, they did what they had to do. We cannot keep on blaming apartheid for what has happened in our sport. I mean, apartheid is gone now for many, many years. What have we done to ensure that we educate our managers, as you said, in the university courses? We do general football courses. We in South Africa are still doing a syllabus that's been designed for Germany to have used 40 years ago. So Germany have evolved that syllabus, but we're still using a very old form of coaching. And the reason is we are not able to keep up with the times, to ensure that we have the most modernistic analysis systems, the most professional management systems, players' welfare, ensuring that we go down even a month before to check out the hotels, to check the food. Because you remember, the important thing is the players' rest and the players' diet is critical. So if you're going to spend, there's been times when your team travels and you get food that you're not accustomed to, that your metabolism can't handle, because our food and food in Ghana is totally different. So now, if that is the case, you don't expect the players to perform at the level you want them to if they are not properly looked after as far as nutrition, as far as rest is concerned, because these are all factors. So you're allowing the opposition to take advantage, and I agree. Maybe that's an area where SAFA should look for in the future, look to upgrade on. I think at a club like Sundowns, a friend of mine, Mike Ntombela, was there. He used to travel long before the time to go down when they played in the Champions League, when they won the Champions League. He used to go down, check out facilities, and sometimes they would even hire their own buses, hire their own hotels. If they found the hotel wasn't up to their standard, they would then say, yes, Sundowns, we're not prepared to stay here. And then FIFA would say, okay, make your own arrangement, and they would do so. So I think that is the way to go. And you can see why Sundowns has made such great strides as far as South African football is concerned. We're up there with the best in Africa. And that wasn't the case in the past.
And I think these are the small things that we need to put in place, because people always overlook the smaller things and tend to turn to the results and want to blame a head coach for these things. But the thing is, there needs to be support structures around it so that your players can compete at the best and your coach can also get the best performance out of his players. It's a ripple effect. And for those that are not in the sporting industry, it might sound very far-fetched, but for us that's in the sporting industry, I can tell you now that there are courses, there are Olympic courses, we've got degrees, we've got honors, we've got masters, we've got PhDs in South Africa for all of these things. And the fact that there's people with these qualifications that are sitting at home and can't find work, it's sad.
Yeah, I think it's also a case of when these acquisitions are made, when these positions are filled, we're not doing it in a transparent way. If you look at currently, you look at your setup when you come to your national teams, the coaches that are coaching your national teams, youth teams, are not the best coaches for that specific job. And I say this based on the fact that I've had ample experience of the coaches in this country who I believe can play a role. And I'm not going to mention names, but if you're going to have a under-17 coach, he should be the best youth coach you have in the country to look after that group, and so to your under-20 and so to your under-23s. And the reason I'm saying so is it's the same like when you go to a school and your maths teacher is an average match teacher when you go to grade, what's it, 7, 5 now, I don't know what they call it now, grade 7. It will have a ripple effect when he gets to grade 9, which is a year when he has to decide what subjects to do. If he's struggling in maths, automatically he can't choose maths and science. And then he can't get into university for a specific course. Similarly, if those players haven't prepared well, and I say this based on the fact that not only the national coach, but the club coaches at under 17 level should also be amongst the best you have, and starting with your professional clubs, starting with your provincial teams, etc. And this is what is, I'm not making this up, it's what's happening in rugby. If you look at rugby, they choose and select the best youth coaches for their national teams. Some of those coaches end up becoming the Springbok team. I think there was a coach was coaching the under 20s a few years ago, and he went on to become.
Jake White done it. Jake White done it where he coached the under 20 team and then took that same group of players as a head coach for the Springboks, and then he won the World Cup with those players. So it shows the transition.
I mean, yes, that is the progression, because sport in general has principles, and progression is one of them. You know, biological individuality, load and adaptation. All of these principles are key in when you design either a syllabi, or you design a structure, or you design a plan moving forward, or you plan to have your team win a league and a cup. All of this is done through periodization. But you have to have the football brains to do that. I mean, when I went to Brazil the first time in 1992, there was 4 of us. And we were told by the late Ted Dimitro that we're going to really smash that course, because we were with him for a couple of years. When we got there, we realized how far behind we were. Because the first thing they did was they didn't take us to the soccer fields. They took us to the classroom and they explained to us that to be able to be a coach, you need to be a good planner. You need to know what periodization is about. You need to know how to load players throughout the season, how to ensure that they have the proper regeneration, how they have to have the proper training methods, etc. You can't overtrain players too early. There's progression involved. And that in itself is a subject on its own. Only then, after you understand the theoretical side, then you go into the practical side. And this is how you build your own philosophy, your own style of coaching. The best coaches in the world are very good at periodizing, whether it's football, cycling, rugby, any sport. Because of the competitiveness of the sport in the modern day, you have to plan. And I think that's where we're falling down. We don't plan. We do things very haphazardly. There's a camp coming up for under 17 to call players in. Now we're still looking for players. We're trying to find out who is the good player. Now we phone sometimes Chiefs, send your best players, send your best players. We should have a database that tells us who is the best under 17 players. So we should have been monitoring them for the last 5 years and saying, so-and-so is a very good player. This boy is an excellent striker. He's been in the system for this time. Because Safa has a thing called My Safa, which is all these players, which is brilliant what they've done. But are they monitoring the progress of these kids? Or are these kids just in the system so they have a database of saying Farouk Khan under 12, Farouk Khan under 14? No. What is Farouk Khan doing? Is he good enough to play that team? Because now what we're doing is we're selecting a team on the eve of qualification for a major tournament. This is not right. I mean, when I started in Brazil, Brazil had 3 under 17 teams. So they had 60 boys, 60 plus boys, touring consistently over that season, having the tutors with them, going all over the world, playing games, and getting the coaching. So when they beat you in a top international, it's not accidental. It's not accidental. It's something that, I mean, you looked at them in the Olympics, for example, Brazil, phenomenal team. It was something out of this world. And now can you imagine how strong that team is moving forward? So this generation that they have a very good generation coming through. Can we see the same about ourselves? I don't know. I've seen the 20s, I've seen the 17s, they're struggling.
But I think that's all things that we need to take into consideration, and hopefully the administrators watching this. And I mean, it's confirmed that you guys do watch the show, because we will be getting feedback after this from some administrators in football.
We're being proactive. We're not being reactive. And we're saying we're doing this in the spirit of the game. We're not trying to make people look bad or speak ill of anybody. I think what South is doing is admirable. They're trying their best. But sometimes your best is not enough. You need to start making sure you think outside the box. You need to start reinventing yourself. You need to stop having nepotism when it comes to selecting people. I mean, here's proof. We've got in a coach of this Hugo Bross's caliber, and he seems to shoot from the hip. He's not scared of anybody. He went up against some of the coaches lately saying he needs their support, and he calls a spade a spade. And that is good because then you know where you stand with him. And I think this is where his players are now at. They know this is a coach that can't be easily wavered by anybody or what they say. It doesn't bother him. All he's worried about is his job and how well he does it.
No, definitely. I mean, looking at that and going forward now, how strong do you think Safa's case is in this entire situation? Do you think that there's a good possibility that we could come out of this with a rematch?
I think we should, in fairness, we should come out with a rematch to an extent. Look, we can't prove that Ghana had anything to do with it, so it would be unfair for them to say we should be awarded the points. But I think a fair decision would be to have a replay, like when we played Senegal. I don't know if you remember when Sheiks was in the team.
Yeah.
And there was dubious handball. But what Senegal did is exactly what Ace has done now. He proved manipulation. You have to prove manipulation. You can't talk about a isolated incident like the penalty. Now, what he's done is he's broken it down and shown, as you said earlier on, he's shown that 90% of the decisions went against us, which clearly then indicates that there was manipulation. So if the technical guys from FIFA see that and they acknowledge that there was manipulation, then definitely there will be a great opportunity for us to have this replay.
No, definitely. Coachy, well, we're going to leave it at that. We're going to hopefully pick up on things once there is new findings in this case, and hopefully things do materialize. South Africa do get what they deserve, which is a rematch, because, I mean, it's disappointing. I mean, it's been in the media all week. Everybody knows what went down. But once again, look, thanks for your time this evening, sharing your insight, sharing how we can move forward as a nation in the football sphere. And hopefully this will have a ripple effect on everything else we do as a nation, periodization and planning, so that we can have the best outcome. I mean, that's all that we want for this country.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was nice chatting to you.
Always a pleasure. Look forward to doing it soon. That was Coach Farouk Khan giving us insight on what went down in the Bafana and Ghana match and what happened behind the scenes, and also how us as a nation can move forward, working together and obviously planning for the future ahead. Well, it's now 10 minutes past 8. We're going to wrap this one up, and when we come back, we're chatting all things football again. Another inspirational story. This time we're going to be chatting to a youngster who comes from the Cape Flats and is on his way to Europe. This is something that us as a country have to make happen for him because he deserves it. He's going to tell us a bit about his journey and how he overcame so many challenges in his life to being one step away from playing football at the highest level in Europe. I mean, this is a phenomenal story, something Coach Farouk Khan just spoke about earlier, getting our players to play in Europe. And here's our chance to make this happen for him. Stay tuned. We're chatting to Irshad Abrams right after this break.